Can you hear me now, Mustafa?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Oh, really? Um, how about now? Is it working now?
No, we can't see you, but you can continue. We can hear you clearly.
I actually my input, but I can repeat
Yes,
from
please
the
repeat.
beginning.
Please
Yeah.
repeat. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Hello everyone. Really great to join this session. And I'm Hong from Green Mission Hub, a local environmental think tank. We've been working on this on climate and energy transition and finance as responsible overseas investment since 2012. And we worked with PCI back in 2018 on fostering a joint dialogue on greening CPEC. So it's really great to join this discussion again virtually. And regarding the challenges and opportunities for scaling up private sector investment in renewable energies in Pakistan, we've done a research before the pandemic on the financing models of renewable energy projects overseas from China. And it seems that compared to conventional power projects such as coal and other fossil fuels, the renewable energy, the investors in renewable energy sector are more diverse. In addition to the SOE, state-owned companies, we also have private companies or the EPCs who play a key role in the project development in renewable energies. Uh, Chinese private companies face such as the high financing cost um, going abroad because the Chinese banks have higher risk compared to internationals. And also the domestic renewable energy subsidy or paid in delay. So it squeeze up the financial resources of the private companies. And also in the financing models, the Chinese financial institutions have less capacity on risk assessment for renewable energy projects. Sometimes they are used to assess project assessment based on the country risk assessment. That is to say, for many developing countries such as Pakistan, who have sovereign debt burden, then the project risk assessment result are relatively lower, and then which discourage Chinese investors, Chinese banks to invest in a Pakistan market. So this is one of the second barrier or challenge. And thirdly, the Chinese companies, they need capacity building on how to mobilize multilateral banks' financial resources through the blended financing models. They don't know how to tap into the concessional financing models of many developing multilateral financial institutions. And when the projects are up and going in the operation period, the Chinese owners or the project owners, they don't use the long-term, they don't engage long-term investors, such as the pension funds or sovereign funds, unlike their peer investors from Japan or Korea. So these challenges, they really pose a challenge, especially to Chinese private sector investors, because they are more sensitive to the risk, to the foreign exchange risk, the sovereign rate ratings, and also to the financial flows. So our recommendation is that, on the one hand, the Chinese banks need to build up their capacity on the risk assessment of the renewable energy projects, because they need to emphasize less on the country risk, sovereign risk. They need to look at the project level risk assessment. And also from the Chinese central bank, there are also opportunities to change this, which is the macroprudential assessment. In the macroprudential assessment, they haven't incorporated the overseas green investment into the evaluation of the macroprudential assessment. So it doesn't provide an incentive for banks to invest in overseas renewable energy projects enough. And also the Chinese the project pipeline of the renewable energies is really needed for the Chinese investors to identify the suitable projects, and the Sinosure could consider more to support more actively the Chinese companies and financial institutions' investment in renewable energy projects in BRI countries, and also to consider provide the guarantees for non-SOE, non-state-owned companies to support the private sector to go out, and also encourage the Chinese banks to to build up capacities on their due diligence study and the study of the local policies and market conditions. And these are the recommendation, all the findings we had based on the research. And beyond this, we also think that there are opportunities for the at the host country side. For Pakistan, for example, there's a strong demand to build up the green finance policy system. And to start with, we can consider establish the green finance taxonomy to define the green and low carbon technologies and projects for the financial institutions to support. And in addition to the green taxonomy, Pakistan could also consider to introduce the mandatory or semi-mandatory environmental information disclosure in line with the green taxonomy, so that the international investors are able to assess the real risk or the performance, the climate performance at the project level instead of the country ratings. And on this regard, we think there are many room for China and Pakistan to cooperate at high-level policy dialogue, like government-to-government dialogue on green finance policy dialogue, and at the bottom-up expert-to-expert or expert-to-business dialogue on the green finance capacity building to build up the financial institutions' awareness and capacity on green financing, and also on climate risk assessment, and also on climate project level climate performance evaluation, as well as the climate related environmental information disclosure. And in addition to the China-Pakistan bilateral high level or bottom up dialogues, we also think there is a great potential for to go beyond, to convene dialogue with China, Pakistan, and other developing countries regarding financing the energy transition. As previous speakers have pointed out, many initiatives are already happening in Global South on energy transition mechanism and also on innovative financing. So there are there is great value to broaden up the dialogue with other developing country stakeholders, policymakers, and businesses on this issue. And I will stop here. Mustafa, thanks for the invitation again.
Thank you very much, Hongyu, and I apologize that you had to repeat yourself. But all's well that ends well, I think. Your points are particularly for 2024 onwards cooperation in Pakistan, where we now have a new government coming in soon, and I think there'll be new impetus to the China-Pakistan economic corridor. I think these are very important suggestions, and I really look forward to working very closely with Green Innovation Hub in this regard. Now we'd actually like to open this up, and would love to hear from people who are in this room and also people who are online. So I think we can have people who want to speak. They can raise their hands, and online on Zoom also you can raise your hand, and we will take notice, and we can proceed with a discussion of comments, ideas, suggestions. Ambassador Masood Khalid.
Thank you very much, PCI, for this opportunity, personally to me, for inviting. And I would also like to acknowledge with appreciation the presentations which have been made here by Mr. Zuberi, a very succinct presentation, and he did meet his target of 6 minutes, but gave a very good overview of how the energy scene is in Pakistan, and also Mr. Zishan and others. Now, I am no energy expert, but I just want to share my thoughts. First of all, I think in the last 8 to 9 years under CPEC, the energy scene has completely transformed in Pakistan. All those present here would recall how badly we were suffering from the energy shortfall and the load shedding. And now that phase is over. In fact, we have, if I'm not wrong, we have surplus power in our system. So we should thank our Chinese friends for helping us in a time of crisis. And I must say with emphasis that China is a friend, steadfast friend, which has stood by Pakistan on all occasions. Now, about this transition to green energy projects, I would like to submit that for the last 7 decades or so, 6 decades, we completely neglected this vast coal reservoir of Thar. And it was after CPEC that now we see these projects which have come up and contributing to our national grid. And then several more projects are in the pipeline. So my point is that we cannot afford to neglect this reservoir which nature has bestowed on us. And now there is technology available, as Mr. Zuberi mentioned. I think our plants are running on supercritical technology, and now we talk of ultra supercritical technology. And as we progress in the years to come, of course, technology will come in. So we cannot just bypass or ignore this particular asset we have. And then he also mentioned the penalty clause, which can be invoked. We are already facing lots of challenges, multiple challenges on that counts. Indonesia could not manage it despite its thriving economy. So I think we need to factor in this thing. And China and India are also using their coal reserves we are all committed to these commitments under undertakings under COP28, etc. But I think developed countries also need to help developing countries like Pakistan. So this is my first point, because we cannot actually, there has been a lobby in Pakistan which has succeeded in Pakistan's dependence on the import of fuel oils. And I think this stranglehold has to be broken, but we have to create a sound and a healthy energy mix. Renewables are very important. We have good water resources which remain unexploited, but now government is moving in that direction, and there is some optimism which Mr. Zubairi, gave to us in terms of the spread of renewables in the next, I think, 10, 15 years. So that's a good sign. I think financing would be available. The problem is that we somehow lack in offering commercially viable, technically viable projects financially. There have been loopholes in the past too, but I hope over time we can improve this particular aspect. If we present good projects, bankable projects, technically viable projects, I'm sure not only Chinese investors will come in developing our renewable sector, but also other international partners. There will be bilateral lenders, other, our European partners can also chip in. So this is an important point. So we should our concerned authorities here, institutions should really focus on coming up with good projects. And I think nobody mentioned security, but I need to say that security is important, very important for any investor, be it Chinese or others. Now, there was a very good, I think, the lady there, our friend from China,
Miss Hongyu. Her name is Miss Hongyu.
Yeah,
Yes.
Call. She, I think, mentioned the need for a policy dialogue. I think it's a good suggestion, which can be part of your recommendation. Policy dialogue between Pakistan and China on this transition. And lastly, because experts are here, when I was in China in 2015, I'm sure, I don't know what the fate of this initiative is, but China announced this initiative. It's called the Global Energy Interconnection, GEI, in 2015 for the development of a global power grid.
Sorry, what is it?
Global Energy Interconnection, interconnectivity or interconnection. For the development of a global power grid. And the concept was to connect remote renewable sources of energy to global consumption centers using ultra high voltage power transmission lines spanning continents. Like it's part of BRI, but look at the vision. And an example which was given while this was being presented, they said that this way, peak demand for electricity in the evening in Eastern China, for example, could be met using solar power at noon in Central Asia. Look at the interconnectivity concept. So I don't know what the fate of that initiative is now, but I think I'll just like to flag this, that this Matiari Lahore transmission line was also done by the state grid, and the state grid was steering this initiative as far as I recall. But I thought I'll just flag this. We have great potential, and Pakistan can, of course, overcome all these problems provided we are focused and our priorities are right. Thank you very much.
With your permission, Mr. Akil Jaffrey here. He just left. Acha. I was just going to actually ask him because you asked about renewable investment in Pakistan. And myself.
Please.
And PPIB is I think they worked very hard to have international bidding of how many megawatt was it, sir? 600 megawatts. A- And I think, if I'm not wrong, please contradict me, but there was not even one international bid received. Not even one.
Twice it was advertised.
Sorry. So that is why we had invited PPIB.
Yes, because you very well said that project was not clearly. Project you have said technically, financially, and environmentally should be viable. We should do a lot of homework before announcing any project. If you allow me, I must compliment that what Mr. Masood Saab has sure, very nicely presented the point, and very important and pertinent questions have been raised by Mr. Masood Saab. And what I would like to add, when I was in PPIB, the concept of the global grid was taught. We did a study, we jotted down a project that we are talking about the China-Pakistan energy corridor. We talked about the power corridor. The idea was that Pakistan should be connected to the China through an ultra high voltage line, and all our hydel resources should be tapped, which are renewable resources. And these resources could be utilized in China, and then it should be extended, the grid. Some work was done, but unfortunately, we were so much committed with the existing projects that it could not materialize.
Through ultra high voltage line is a very interesting point. I didn't know about that. Sir, Brigadier Jinjua sir.
I just have two quick points, and having been associated with this renewable, 4G Foundation was the first entity to create this wind farm, and I was the project director there.
I see.
So I viewed this landscape very closely. You see, the problem is when you try and attract IPPs, the most compelling factor is the profit. What is the ROI? And there are problems with our tariff structure. We had the upfront versus feed-in tariffs, and then competitive bidding. And when they went for the competitive bidding, there was very little for the foreign as well as domestic investors by way of profit. So unless this whole conversation goes to the policy issues, I think this all would remain a pipe dream. Secondly, the very good point was brought about the Infrastructure Development Bank for the Green Finance. It's done in the 94, done in the 80s. I think this needs to be done again because there is a serious liquidity crunch both with investors and other, even the other stakeholders. Third point is about our grid. You see, now we have just quite parsimoniously agreed to do something upgradation wise for our HVDC. And we have evacuated hardly from Matiari onwards. There are still grid interconnection problems. Unless we resolve these issues in a holistic manner, and for that to happen, a proper policy debate is a must, where national energy mix, national energy policies, and the investment incentive landscape, they have to be in sync. Unless that has happened, then all kinds of energy transitions will remain, you see, a pipe dream. So these are my 2 cents on this issue.
Sir, thank you. I think both are important points. I think the policy clarity and internalizing that and implementing that. I think that is where NEPRA, I think, comes in. And secondly, the ROE, return on equity, is very important point. I think that we sometimes swing like a pendulum. You know, when the projects happened, at that time, there was some criticism that the tariffs are very attractive because they were cost plus tariffs. So you listed your cost, and in addition to that, it was opposite of bidding. You added that this is the extra cost that has been incurred by my company because of the terrain, etc., multiple factors. So this is the tariff that I should have. It should be inflated. This is the cost, and this is the plus factor, whatever the variables are. And whatever the plus was added, that tariff at that time was given by NEPRA. It was an attractive tariff. I think we needed it at that time. I don't think it was wrong. But pundits said that it was, we gave very attractive tariffs all over to, as per the 1994 power policy, to CPEC and other investors at that time invested. And now it's the opposite. Now the tariff is being actually, some investors are also actually saying that we don't want to continue with existing projects. I'm not talking about Chinese investors, generally power investors saying. Dr. Sebastian, would you like to add something?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me as probably the only CPEC Belt and Road outsider here. As the only Belt and Road Initiative outsider, because Germany is not member of the Belt and Road Initiative, and you know that Belt and Road Initiative is a controversial issue in the EU. Let me give you my personal opinion. I think we should not work against each other. We should work by joining hands, and in that regard, it's very interesting for me to participate here. I dealt with the Belt and Road Initiative issues since the beginning in 2013. So very interesting to listen to you. Second, you should know that Germany is actually very much involved in climate and energy finance and promotion and support and development here in the country. It's one of our three main focal areas. We actually have a climate and energy partnership with Pakistan, which is of course, regarding the volume, not at all comparable to CPEC, but it is also something. And honestly, I would like to lead it a bit more closer towards CPEC by improving the coordination, maybe even the cooperation there. So because we are not only in energy production, but we are also in promoting grids, especially smart grids. And we have some experience with creating the right framework for attracting private investors. And that brings me to my third point. I think private investors are the main instrument. You can look at multilateral finance, but multilateral finance, even with World Bank and ADB, is at a certain point limited. You can use it as a catalyst instrument, but don't trust too much on it. So private investor, that means first you need, and we've just talked about, the gentleman there mentioned the problems with feed-in tariff and competitive, the auction system. You need a clear model established by the government, and a model which is not changed every 2 or 3 years, but where investors can trust. And I give you one example from Vietnam, where actually the Germans advised the Vietnamese government in setting up such a model for investors. In that regard, it was a feed-in tariff. Within 9 months, the solar energy production in Vietnam grew from 500 megawatts to 6,000 megawatts, because there was so much money waiting, private money waiting in the country. This was mainly domestic finance investors. And once the government issued this feed-in tariff, they were all jumping in. At the end, it became too much. The grid, that is the second, and the grid got into trouble, and they had to even switch off private solar farms. But that only makes clear how much as possible if you set the right model and if you guarantee the proper grid. That brings me to the next point, the overall investment climate here in the country. I clearly say that has to be improved. Because when this goes now more towards international investors, and today we heard very interesting examples even from the Chinese private investor side. The overall Pakistan reputation, investment reputation, but also the overall investment landscape, of course, has to be improved. That has now to do a lot with IMF negotiations, etc. I'm not going into detail there. But that will be crucial, what's coming up there this year for setting the right signals. And then at the end, two very specific points. The first one on access to multilateral finance, like a global climate fund. Honestly, I'm pretty frustrated how little the know-how in the government here is. They are constantly asking us for advice, for supporting, for trying to help to build up expertise. We are doing this actually actually I think the FCDO, the Brits are doing it for the Ministry of Finance. We are doing it for Ministry for Economic Affairs, but that cannot be the final target to always ask for international support. There has to be a clear strategy in the government to build up a unit wherever it is located, a unit which has constantly available this expertise, and where people are not changed every 2 or 3 months and then the expertise is lost. Last but not least, debt swaps. Germany has done debt swaps with in public finance with Pakistan, not only for health and social objectives, but also for climate and energy. It's actually we have offered one swap in end of 22, which crashed because the government crashed the deadlines, unfortunately. This is an unfortunate example, but at the end, I have to say, and if I mean, I'm ready to offer our experiences there regarding debt swaps. It is a complex instrument, and it is an instrument where you should have only limited expectations, especially regarding debt relief. It's not an instrument for debt relief. It's more an instrument for saving foreign currency, but this works only in a very slow matter over years and years. So happy to provide our experiences there, but then here I would like to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sebastian. I think this is a very concrete suggestions and very candid observations. I know that now Germany is the biggest trading partner of China from the EU as well, and I think that your expertise, Germany's expertise in clean development and green financing is important, and I hope that we can continue this discourse with you in the future. Would Miss Anchi Dang like to speak? She's online on Zoom here. Give any remarks? Yes, please.
Sir, I'm Commodore Khalid from National Institute of Maritime Affairs. First of all, I'm thankful to you and the forum of PCI that we had availed this opportunity to discuss this very important and a relevant topic. You see, basically, CPEC is a very, very important project for Pakistan and both Pakistan and China. The overall objective at this point of time of CPEC, apart from many other trade corridor, the energy corridor is basically hinged upon the transfer of gray energy from Gwadar to China at this point of time. I think instituting the green energy measures at this point of time by your organization and discussing on this topic is very relevant and is a very important also because there is no doubt that world has to transform into the taking different measures transform into the transition into the green energy sectors. Why the investors at this point of time are lacking in investment in renewable energy? I think it is because of the lack of the availability of the robust technology and awareness among the population. That is one of the reasons that investors are lacking. We have a bit of like recently the solar system has come in Pakistan, a lot of energy, a lot of investment has gone into it. But there are many other sectors like wind. You see, the Pakistani wind sector, especially across the Makran coast, it needs.
You cannot even stand in Dalbandi in the wind.
Yeah, so much of that. So there is a need to, I think we need to invest. There's no infrastructure.
I've seen Dalbandi.
So my point here is that apart from importing we need to invest on the research and development on this sector, as well as we need to uh, focus on transfer of technology also in this sector. Thank you.
Are to be seen in a wider perspective. If you see the in SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, in last 30 years, there was 70% stagnancy in provision of electricity to the population of Pakistan. It was stagnant on 70%. Later in the when the CPEC comes, from 2018 to 2023, if you see now the energy accessibility is on 75%. And this shows the power of the CPEC, that we have progressed towards the some SDGs, because you have to see everything in till 2030 will come under the lens of SDGs. This is one aspect. The another aspect is the World Economic Forum report, which is Energy Transition Report. Is the Pakistan stands on 107th position out of 120. So this shows the world is way ahead in transition of energy, and there is a potential. And now I will come towards the local sector. You and Forum said about the return of investment. If we will talk about the domestic, the household customers is using Pakistan electricity around 46%. Of total generation, the 46% goes towards the domestic. It is not the industry. It is different from the world. So what a domestic and return of investment of a domestic customer of a solar domestic use and household use is 3 to 4 years. If you are not going on a hybrid system, on a battery system, it may be within 5 years. So with the 46% of usage, the local bank's parts comes in. If the local bank will give loans on little bit lucrative profit ratios and little bit lucrative, they will give the loans and they can bear some load. The local investors and local domestic people will start using those systems. And the next thing is the capacity charge of the NEPRA. If you will see the capacity charge of the NEPRA, it is on the imported coal, it is highest for 23 rupees, and the local coal, it is 13 rupees. So we cannot give away with the use of local coal. And the capacity charges has to be seen, and unfortunately on the wind power, it is around capacity charges is 33 rupees. You have to see these wind power potential, but you know the wind power require the grid, but solar doesn't require the grid. If you are locally investing into solar with the domestic banks, you don't probably need on a wider scale the private investors. So my suggestion is that the government, the PCI should give these suggestions to the government to review the capacity charges on the wind, number one. And number two is the encourage the loans by the local banks to the domestic customer, which is 46% of the users. And of course, there is a need to improve our grid infrastructure. The largest breakdown happens in Pakistan in December 2022 was because of the wind power connectivity in Sindh with the grid. The whole country went down, and it is given in the World Economic Energy Report. of 2023, that it was because of that. So we need to improve, and we need to improve with no investor will, external investor will come until unless our own domestic investors will not be encouraged. So capacity charges, the domestic bank to the our 46% of customers, and the technical expertise. These are the three suggestions from. And of course, Bahia University will be glad to work with all this with the Park China Institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Your points are well noted, and I think very specific suggestions. We will definitely take them into account. We look forward to also working with you in the future. Oh, sorry.
I think I can speak loud enough for everyone to hear. So this is Basit. I'm working as a manager research at Renewables First, which is an energy transition think tank. Before I give my comment, just wanted to highlight few things because from the university highlighted. Just few clarities. I think you're referring to the power purchase price when we are talking about the capacity payments. So basically, I think that's primarily because from the NEPRA, when it calculates, it takes into account the cost that was given to the agreements back in 2011 when first wind power plants were installed. If you go towards the recent wind power plants, they're about 4 cents, so that makes it about 12 to 15 rupees at max. Yes, but that's the projected price is based on, all the wind power plants that have been installed up to date. So that's why the cost too high. So if I'm going to install a new plant right now, the cost is around 15 rupees per unit. So just wanted to have a bit of a clarification on that. So in terms of my comments, firstly, I think first point is that, my own thoughts resonate very much with most of our panelists here who pointed out the policy uncertainty as a major factor that leads towards impeding the investment within this sector. But I think there is another critical issue here, and that's basically the role of the government itself. And unfortunately, what we have seen is that we are more focused on project development when the actual mandate is for the policies to be implemented and drafted. And we can see that happening in real time within the energy sector. We have made some good policies, good targets. We have come up with ARE policy, about 30% targets for 2030 for the solar and wind. Not being able to materialize, I can safely say right situation is that we won't be able to even halfway reach that target by 2030 if things go as they are going on. And similarly, we're focusing on this particular project that we were just referring a while back, 100 megawatt project, which is a very good initiative going towards solar, having more investment in the RE sector. I think the issue is that, once again, we are thinking of just from a project perspective. I think if we think of just, putting the policy up there, let the private sector develop its own, projects, acquire land, get things done. They know what the things are on the ground. And I think when we put up a 600 megawatt kind of a bar for the project, you have literally, removed all the local players out of the market. You are only looking at international markets, and that's why we have been going all. So I think here is that we need that how we can have smaller chunks that are, that can be assimilated by the local market who can find their own financing. Talking to a couple of investors as well, and they from as well, ready to find their finances, know the nitty-gritties of how this financing have to be mobilized specifically in the context of Pakistan. So I think that's one of the major things that we have to do is we have to realign ourselves. Okay, what our role is as to implement the policies that are there and let the private sector define how the project, where the project will be materialized. Secondly, I think a lot of discussions around one happen also localized as well. There's in the IT says it's $52 billion next 10 years. Our estimate is more than that, about $100 billion. But come from put all of that on topics. Technology just to give frame frames panels. I think one thing that I've noticed was, in the discussion, clarity on the narrative, and you have also pointed it out that I think that we're not thinking about taking investment away from the investors. It's more or less you have to view it from the point as supporting them, and situation. I think for the investor in the IPPs in Pakistan, I think if you think about it, this is a poor lucrative situation because you're kind of like giving them a way out. Because now they don't see a way out because we don't have enough, space or fiscal space to adjust tables and receivables unless we burden them or arrange them some other way that will, shift the narrative that when people phase out, it's not a phase out is abrupt. It is not a phase out that's right over about line 3. The slides that Christoph showed us about 8 to 9 years of retirement at max that are looking at 20 fleet Pakistan as. We need to shift that narrative as well. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Basit. Very, very incisive remarks. And I think that point of private investment, domestic investment that we have, that is available, I think that's a very important point. We have a lot of companies who have equity, who have financial muscle to invest, like Engro, Hercules. Zishan Sahab, you've also worked with different consortiums in Pakistan, and a lot of these joint ventures which Pakistani companies have done with foreign companies. So I think that is we have to unleash that and exploit that domestic potential. And I think it'll be interesting to see what can be provided in terms of policy support to local investors, so that feeling of perhaps being not been prioritized is not there. And anyone else? And then we can wrap up. Nepra, PPIB was here, but they left. Shah Jahan was in a meeting with the secretary of his ministry, but Mr. Akil Jafri, director of policy, was here, but he left just before the Q&A started. Nepra, we should have Nepra next time. This was, I think, important factor. Anyone else? Any last comments?
Yes, I feel kind of inclined to comment on this last point with the with the local value chains, because I hear it there and there and there, and I would like to put a point of caution there on the table. Last time I heard like let's build up our own solar panel industry. I mean, I think that's illusionary. You cannot compete anymore with especially China, which is, I don't know, decades in advance. So the point is, I mean, you brought up interesting point, like let's maybe concentrate on the simple parts, which can be then added here. But then you have to optimize, improve your quality management here, because any investor, be it Chinese or German, or he will say, I prefer to pay double for my frames, and I'm sure they fit, instead of trusting on a cheap supplier where then I have problems afterwards. There's one thing which you did not mention. I mean, I very much see your currency point, foreign currency point, but then why not attracting foreign producers as foreign direct investors here in the country? Because this is a huge market. Why not trying to attract investors like from China, like from somewhere else, to build factories here in the country and produce here in the country? because then you don't have the currency. On the one side, you don't have the currency issue anymore. On the other side, you can be sure you don't have to do R&D in a place where you lost anyway because of the competition. But you get the people in the country who know how to produce, and that's only one. But then you need a proper investment landscape, of course, here.
I think it's a mix that we have to have of domestic and foreign investment, because we have domestic investment, which is largely untapped, apart from real estate. I think that plus foreign investment is in my opinion, it should be a hybrid mix. Please, sir.
Let me add something. Now you see in Pakistan, there are 3 phases of IPPs, private sector generation. First phase started in 1994 when there were all foreign investors, and they came because there was a clear-cut policy, a very crisp and clear policy with the standard documents, so that risk matrix was very clear. To what extent lenders will bear the risk, to what extent government will bear the risk, and to what extent lenders will bear the risk. And then it was all foreign investors. Then after that, there were some problems in the power sector. Foreign investors left the country and nobody was coming. Then government announced a policy in 2002. In 2002 policy, all local investors came. You say Angro came, Atak group came, Hapco group again came, Tapal came, Gul Ahmad came, you name any, Nishat, Mansha group came. Every big leading business house of Pakistan enters into the power business, and they've developed projects, and their projects are operating in Pakistan. Then there is a third phase. Third phase started with CPEC, in which, because at that time it was a severe power crisis, people were not getting any financing, so China came to our rescue, and that phase is under CPEC. So there's a perception that local investors are not coming in power generation, in private power. I don't buy this, because in the second phase, all local investors were there, all leading business houses are there.
Yes, sir, local investors are coming in power sector, but they are basically investing more of in fossil fuel, not in the renewable energy. That is the problem, sir.
Let me tell you.
Because in renewable energy, they don't have that much of confidence in that the project is going to be succeed or not.
Let me tell you, if you go back in 2002, at that time, renewable energy projects, wind and solar, were not viable. They are very expensive. At that time, you see Helmar project, Uch project, this projects around Lahore, all are based on gas. There was a gas indigenous resources. What other resources could be? Again, there was a crisis situation. So a lot of projects came on diesel technology, because at that time there was a severe shortages of 10 hours to 15 hours. If you see in 2002 and 2003. So projects had to come very quickly. So they adopted the technology, and whatever the fuel was available, they developed project on those fuels.
I think I personally really enjoyed this discussion today. It was a very substantive discussion. And we will make a report also, and we will share it with all of you. And I think that this is the right time to sort of come up with some serious, tangible things on this, because energy is becoming a very important, very critical issue for Pakistan. And countries are now moving towards energy security and preserving their energy security. But we have a I'm not going to use the word crisis, but we are still grappling with this issue, and I think some of the suggestions here today can be really appropriate in guiding the way for the new government in Pakistan to move forward, and we'll be working with them. Ubaid, would you like to say something from STPI?
Touch upon the same things that we highlighted, that we just look at past few years, then we can see that the Chinese ecosystem, or you should say your Chinese perhaps more focus is shifting towards the green side. I mean, because I mean, China is has been under the pressure because the European model, which is currently operating, is perhaps a bit more towards more sustainable goals. And I think Mustafa Saab, you were there at the Belt and Road Forum as well. You can also see that clearly there is a very increasingly strong focus of the BRI forum as well, going towards the green development as well. So I think what China is actually looking for is to put on some of the very innovative and alternate financing mechanisms through which these initiatives can be expedited. That is why they come up with the GIFP model, which you initially highlighted at the start as well. So now, I mean, just if we look at now the landscape of Pakistan, it is now going from the CPEC energy projects that are already there. Now, what we have to do is actually we have to attract the private sector investments coming in from the China. And I think this is where we need to provide that enabling environment for not only the private sector, but as of now, even the Chinese Exim Bank, the Chinese Development, CDBs, and they're a bit concerned, just like many of us highlighted, of for the investments in Pakistan. So perhaps this is again, I think, what initially highlighted, the HBL highlighted, the Bank of Punjab highlighted, that the financing institutions also need to provide them some regulatory or I mean these models that are more attractive to what the Chinese financing model ecosystem is, because the Chinese financing ecosystem model is a bit different from what the European model is. So perhaps we need to come up with some special purpose vehicles or financing vehicles that can actually mobilize those investments in this renewable energy and the green energy landscape as well. So, but apart from that, I think it has been such a wonderful discussion, and really, really looking forward to having a report coming out of it. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
That means
Yeah.
there's a good discussion happening.
Yeah, actually, just जी 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 इसी के ऊपर हाँ जी
Giants with the deep pockets to domestic की बात हो रही है, this policy, no domestic terms.
So actually, I have some contradictory view on the recent 2-3 comments. One, the government has already entered into the long-term agreements. Number one, so we have to honor and oblige all those responsibilities toward us. Number two, if you look at the dependability, so the fossil fuel dependability is much higher than the renewable, where there is a seasonality impact. So 46% domestic users, they have a way out by putting a solar on their house, but that is during the day. They cannot go for the wind, right? So they need to have a core base load in the night to survive. For industry, the mega houses, they can go for the daylight program. So there could be a mix. There could be a mix, number one, where we can have a innate base load that should be either fossil fuel, and we have to go for the capacity payments that the government has inked the agreements. So whether we give them a way out or no way out, they have to be there. Replacement, yes, we can do it with the mix to the best possible way. Second, coming to the point that the financiers, the international financiers and the local financiers, uh, wind was not viable. Now it is a viable project where we have that air corridor available, where we can have installed more wind capacity, and then that can survive us further. But again, it depends on the import. The price has reduced, but price has not gone down to zero. It is again 80 odd $1 million project that need to be installed for the 49 megawatt. Solar, again, as highlighted very correctly, that our technology needs few decades to reach where China is already. So we again need to go for the import. So coming from the devil's advocate point of view, that you have in the contracts where in some projects we are not even utilizing their capacity to avoid the import of the coal. So this is the ground reality, that we are paying the capacity tariffs. Now, how we are compensating by not putting the load on the new users by adding some other alternate, uses by hydro, by solar, by some other, so that the alternate mix and the cost go down. So this is the ground reality. And again, I'm reiterating the point that maybe a 2050 target with the milestones after every 5 year consistent policy. But I do support a policy dialogue, that where we are heading, that Mr. Zuberi has mentioned, that clear cut policy guidelines, how we can do that, and where we can
go ahead. Coming to the last point that you have made, the banks with the deep pockets or the you can say discounted financing, it's already available. It's already available. The point where we get a roadblock is the lack of documentation in the society, that we as a economy, when there's a documentation, we can grant them loan, you can give them 6%, 5%, 4% liquidity available for the solar panels to be installed at their house. But if somebody come in with no banking record or some other, then definitely it put us on a high risk slot, playing with the depositor money. So that becomes a showstopper. Yeah, hope I have added something. Thank you.
Or a solar power system for their house. This is the culture. You have to educate people.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to everyone for taking out their morning, which has transcended into the afternoon. Very grateful. Please join for some refreshments, for some tea, for some high tea. Thank you very much.